Hey, it's Webs here with the new Hearthstone news about Mercenaries. This is going to be covering the 24.4 patch notes, and I figured I might as well wait until the patch notes actually come out to cover all of these instead of just flooding my channel with a bunch of extra videos. So let's begin with the general updates. Cthulhu will now be able to be obtained in normal packs, which is really good, or even just crafting him. This allows you to actually play any of the comps that I actually used Cthulhu in, since I do have two of those. Charge is being introduced to Mercenaries, which means some of our existing token summoning things might actually change how they actually function, depending if they give those tokens now charge or rush. It looks like charge is going to allow you to choose the attack when summoned, but rush just attacks a random enemy instead. It's been a little bit inconsistent up to this point. Now, for the first new mercenary is Murloc Holmes, who is a legendary protector Murloc, which at max level he has 13 attack, 87 HP. His first ability is Hot on the Case, which is a fire ability, a speed of 9, gain +5 attack, and attack an enemy. It takes critical damage after it attacks next turn. Punish speed manipulation on the following turn. However, it doesn't really do anything besides just giving you 5 attack on the turn that you actually use it, which makes it a little bit worse. And it has a speed of 9. 1 casters are really common right now, and a protector isn't going to survive that long. Elementary is his second ability, which is a nature ability with a speed of 3, cooldown of 1. Give a friendly character Divine Shield. If it loses it this turn, they gain +5, +10, and attack the enemies opposing them. More Divine Shield synergy within Murlocs, so we are going to be seeing a little bit more use for the Sir Finley equipment that actually does damage whenever a Divine Shield is popped. And there are also other ways in Murlocs to actually give all your mercenaries Divine Shield, which means something like this might be actually really useful, especially because this actually combos pretty well with Murky and his heal that allows you to just nature combo and give everything Divine Shield. And his final ability is And the Killer is, at level 5, is a speed of 4, a cooldown of 1, deal 16 damage to an enemy, make a prediction for a bonus. First arrived is deal 16 damage to an enemy. If it's acted first this turn, deal 16 more damage. And they act last in the following up turn. Good as a counter for Trigor, I would say. Last on the scene, which is deal 16 damage to an enemy. If it acts last in combat, deal 10 damage to all enemies. Really bad against Trigor in particular, but you're not going to be ever guessing it last if it is going to be versus Trigor. So this probably is useful if you want to get rid of some of your opponent's minions that they actually summon out, or are in a slower matchup where their most powerful mercenary is always going to last. However, I do wonder if this actually will consider your own mercenaries if they act before that mercenary too, or if it only relies on the opponent's mercenaries acting last, first, or whatever. And then obviously the Murderer is the final version, which is deal 16 damage to an enemy. After it destroys 2 mercs, it takes 80 damage, which is insane on how much damage that is. It basically can one-shot almost any single mercenary in the entire game, and if you are running against things that do a lot of AoE damage, that means this could actually trigger really easily, though it is only on mercs and not just minions, so that's a little bit harder to trigger, but is a good way to actually come back to the game if you know your mercenaries are about to die on the exact same turn due to the same mercenary. And now for his equipment, Trusty Sidekick, which is at level 4, a battle cry that summons a 1230 Wattpin beast who attacks enemies who damage your Murloc Holmes. Really weird to see such a big HP pool battle cry. This is actually better than I think any other battle cry equipment that actually currently exists in the game when it comes to a stat line. And it does show that we are moving towards more and more power creep, which means more and more things should probably need to get buffed up to actually keep them in line with things. I don't know if this is going to be the one that a lot of people are going to use, because there are some other equipments that looks a lot better, especially Paid Upfront, which is a battle cry also that gains +4/+4 and refreshes this Merc's abilities by 1, which means everything doesn't start on cooldown, which was my main issue. And finally, we have Suspect Everyone. Passive after an enemy casts a 4, 5, or 6 ability, deal 8 damage to them. Really strange of ability to give a character. I don't know why this is a equipment, but it is what it is. I think paid up front is probably going to be his default, if not Trusty Sidekick. Trusty Sidekick probably has some edge cases where it's going to be pretty decent in like a beast comp or something else. Now for Ysera, who is a legendary fighter. She is a dragon with 8 attack, 84 HP at max level, Verdant Breath 5, Nature Speed 5, deal 12 damage to an enemy, restore that much health to another friendly dragon. So basically just a better Alexstrasza. Emerald Dream, which is at level 5, a speed of 5 and a cooldown of 1. Choose a dream card to cast. Emerald Drake, which is a 25-20 with Rush. Ysera Awakens, which is a nature ability that does 20 damage to all enemies and 5 to all other friendly characters. And Nightmare, which gives a character plus 30 attack and at the end of each turn take 20 damage. I think Nightmare in theory could be really, really annoying in like a Trigor comp. You could combo this with a Lady Anaconda to protect Trigor from actually taking a bunch of damage, and then you're just giving Trigor an additional 30 attack whenever you do use this ability. Though I do think Ysera Awakens is probably what you're going to use the most when it comes to something like this. There are, again, edge cases where plus 30 attack is nothing to laugh at and is going to make for some very funny scenarios. A Kazakus build might be even fun to steal all your opponent's mercenaries, but I don't think this is going to fit in a team like that. Still interesting to see the flexibility in this, and it captures the original card really well. Emerald Oracle at level 5 is a speed of 4, cooldown of 1. Choose one, restore 20 health to a character. Your Merc's abilities are 5 speed faster this turn. Restore 20 health to a friendly character, return it to the bench. I don't think this is ever going to be a choose one. You're 99% of the time going to choose the first ability out of these two. Because speed manipulation is just so good in Mercenaries, and sure, this is a little bit slower because it is a 4-cost ability, but there are ways to increase its speed, makes it even better than it already is, and allows you to actually get some combos that you might not normally be able to without using a mercenary like this. Ysera's Vengeance is her first equipment, which makes Verdant Breath deal 5 more damage. Kind of boring, but it is what it is. Dream Infusion makes it a passive after one of your characters die, restore 7 health to your dragons. A better version of Onyxia's equipment? No, it's Nefarian's equipment. And it doesn't rely on you having a bunch of dragons, which is kind of funny that this is being power crept there, especially because they're both fire mercenaries, but it is what it is. Emerald Majesty is her final equipment, and then Ysera Awaken also restores 15 health to this Merc. Out of these 3 equipments, I think Emerald Majesty will probably be the one that a lot of people use, but Dream Infusion is really good if you have ways to generate a bunch of tokens within dragons, and you already do in the form of both Nefarian, Onyxia, Deathwing, and I'm probably forgetting some other ones. Oh, Kazakus. I think all 3 of her equipments are probably pretty decent. Bwonsambi, which is one of my favorite Warcraft characters, is a epic fighter mercenary who is a troll with 3 attack, 89 HP at max level, Soul Substitution, Shadow Speed 9, deal 28 damage, deal 3 less for each time this was damaged this turn. Because this is a speed of 9, though we do have some speed manipulation within Shadow. I don't know how useful this is actually going to be, since most of the time it's going to do less damage than 28. And I think some of his other abilities are way more insane than this one. For example, Irrefutable Offer at level 5 is a speed of 1 and is a shadow ability that makes you choose from one of his deals and increase the cooldown of this by 1. Deal of Time, all abilities with initial speeds of 5 or faster are 5 speed slower next turn, and all others are 5 speed faster. It makes it really, really useful in combination with his first ability, additional speed manipulation, which is pretty cool to see. It is also pretty good with things like Ysera or other mercenaries that you might want to fit into a shadow-based team that are a little bit slower, that don't see much play for their non-shadow abilities or their really slow abilities that are really good once you actually can speed them up. Deal of Vanity gives him +5 health. All enemy abilities this turn target this if possible. Basically puts a huge target on his back, and we'll see why this is something that you might actually want with one of his later equipments. And then Deal of Fear, which makes him take no damage this turn, and then it returns all mercenaries to the bench at the end of the turn. Can, in theory, protect them. However, I don't think people are going to use this ability. It's a funny little ability, and I don't see any scenarios, given the fact that Battlecry equipments are becoming more and more common, that this is going to work out in your favor in any way, unless you have a bunch of Battlecry equipments yourself. I do think the Deal of Time is probably what you're going to use for the most part, just because of the fact that you can slow down your opponent's abilities and speed your own up. And finally, Binding Contract at level 5 is a speed of 2 with the Shadow tag. Deal 12 damage to an enemy. If this merc dies this turn, deal 90 more. That is the biggest damage output we've ever seen, even bigger than the Murloc Holmes damage output that we saw earlier. I don't know how consistent you're actually going to be able to do this final ability, but if you can actually manage to do it consistently, this could just nuke one of your opponent's mercenaries that you want to get off the board really quickly. Though this does require your opponent to also tack into this mercenary on the exact same turn, which they probably won't actually do. Though his first equipment actually allows you to refresh his abilities by 2 and give the death rattle of refreshing all your other mercenaries by 2, which is probably going to be the thing that a lot of people will use, because this allows you to do the same ability twice in a row if it's a really high impactful ability, outside of the old god builds where they have an incredibly large cooldown. New Client is his second equipment, which is resurrect one of your mercs that died this game with 24 health remaining. I think this is just a new ability, which is the first one of these type of equipments that we've actually seen in PvP. Could be really interesting because it could revive back a really key mercenary that you really would like to have back alive and make it very hard for your opponent to actually get rid of it. And finally, we have Spirit of the Dead, which is a passive. After one of your characters die, restore 7 health to your trolls. We do have some troll synergy now, and Khadgar is technically a troll when he's not in dragon form, so you could actually trigger this quite consistently in a shadow-based team. Shadow-based troll team, actually. Use Vol'jin, Bwonsambi, and Khadgar is on the starting lineup, and then use something like Sylvanas and 2 other mercenaries on the back line. I think that team actually might be a really nice team to try out. And now we're going to get another legendary troll, who is a caster, Korrak the Bloodrager. Really weird that he is a caster out of all things, and weird that he is a legendary and Bwonsambi is not. But at max level, he is a 11 attack, 60 HP. He has the Death Rattle, which is the first Death Rattle on a baseline mercenary. Destroy a random minion. This merc returns to life with their health. Basically, as long as there is a minion on board, Korrak cannot die. It's basically their way to deal with honorable kill as his flavored mechanic from Alterac Valley, but in a new and different way, making him incredibly annoying to actually deal with. I do think his stat line is honestly probably not the greatest. I get it, they wanted to be really, really safe with his attack line, and he does have a lot of ways to actually gain attack, so maybe this could easily be abused, as we'll see with Mounting Anger, which is a speed of 5, gain +5 attack this turn, and attack an enemy. Increases by 3 after use. This isn't going to increase too much, at least rapidly, because of the fact that Korrak is probably going to die really, really quickly every individual turn. Sure, fighters aren't really the most common mercenary currently in the game, but I don't think at having 60 attack makes him where he's tanky enough to actually scale this up quickly enough. Unless he keeps his buffs after he dies. That would be a way to actually make sure he is playable. Eat the Dead is his second ability, which is a speed of 4. That gives him +8 health. Health is increased by 8 each time a character dies, resets after use. Again, if this actually doesn't reset after he dies, then this might actually be pretty good, but because it probably does I don't think this is going to be too useful. Blood Rage is his final ability, which is a speed of 6, cooldown of 2. Distribute 20 damage to random enemies, increased by this Merc's missing health. All these abilities have the same exact issue. The fact that he is going to be dying really, really quickly and really, really often. So I don't know how often you're going to be able to scale up each individual ability. At least first equipment is Winter Axe Strong, which makes Mounting Anger increase an additional 4 attack after use. Kind of boring. Really good if he actually can survive and actually get enough attack. Honor Bound makes Eat the Dead only increase when a friendly character dies, but increases by an additional plus 12. I think the first equipment is probably the better one. And finally, the Ever Living Blood Rage gains Death Blow, restore 20 health, which basically turns offline the Blood Rage for a couple turns. However, it does allow him to actually survive, so you can actually use him to attack into something. If you can actually scale him pretty quickly, then again, I could be completely wrong, but I don't think he's going to be that usable. Archimonde is making his way into Mercenaries and Hearthstone. It's really weird that we're seeing him here first before any other game mode, but it is what it is. He is a demon epic caster with 10 attack, 86 HP. Abilities: Finger of Death at level 5 is a speed of 4. A fell ability, deal 12 damage, gain plus 3 fell damage. Really cool to see some fell scaling again, though we do have an insane amount of fell scaling. So honestly, at this point, I don't know if that's exactly what the fell-based teams actually need. It needs something like a heal or some speed manipulation, which it looks like a Reign of Chaos is going to answer that wish, which is a fell ability at level 5 with a speed of 6, a cooldown of 1, deal 18 damage to all enemies. Your fell abilities are 3 faster next turn. It's a little bit of a delayed fell manipulation for speed, but it's still better than anything that the team currently had. I do think that between these two abilities, this will make Archimonde really, really useful in a fell-based team. I'm curious if you're going to go down a completely demon path or you're going to try to do a menagerie path with all the other mercenaries that for some weird reason have fell synergy throughout the game. Doomfire is his final ability, which is at level 5, a speed of 3. It has a fell tag, a cooldown of 1, give all enemies plus 5 fell weakness this turn, deal 10 damage to them after they act. So basically this is going to deal 15 damage no matter what if you have no way to actually scale up your fell damage. However, if you do have a way to scale up your fell damage, which Archimonde is perfect for that, then it's going to do 18 or more. It actually scales incredibly fast. It's really quick, really decent. Overall, Archimonde a really solid mercenary, even without his equipments. His first equipment makes Doomfire fell weakness permanent. Probably not going to be the one that you're actually going to want to use because Archimonde's golden coin makes it where after a demon dies, restore 10 health to all friendly demons. Because demons do have a lot of ways to actually summon additional demons, and we are seeing some orcs that will summon additional demons later on, I do think this is probably going to be the default as it does solve the big issue that Fell had, which was not a really good healer. You had Gul'dan, but outside of that, Gul'dan is really just a horrible mercenary. And finally, we have Infernal Codic, which is his final equipment that makes Finger of Death gain the Death Blow plus 4 fell damage. If you can guarantee the Death Blow whenever you use Finger of Death, this is really, really good. If you can't, and then I think one of the other two equipments just by default is going to be a lot better, just because of where he'll fit in a demon team. Honestly, out of all the mercenaries so far, I think this one is probably the strongest, and we are going to get even more demons, such as Prince Malchezaar, which is a rare protector that has 12 attack, 79 HP at max level. His first ability is Party Crasher, speed of 3, attack an enemy. If it is a protector, it takes 10 more damage this turn. I don't really like the mercenaries that require your opponents to have a certain role when they can't actually manipulate your opponent's role real easily. Though I guess you could combo this mercenary with Hooktusk, and that's probably where he's going to actually fit, to be honest, because I don't think he fits in a demon team per se. The second ability is Check Your Weapons, which deals 18 damage to the highest attack enemy if it's a fighter. Its attack is permanently halved, round up, has a speed of 5, of course a fel tag. If it was only protectors, if it was protectors, then this would be a lot better. I get where they're coming from for fighters, because fighters are supposed to be the ones that actually attack a lot. But as it currently stands, the main big attack gaining mercenary that I can think of is Khadgar, and this does nothing against him. Unless you can actually change his role, then it does do something. Alright, so all realities is his final ability, which at level 5 is speed of 3, cooldown of 2, shadow tag, deal 25 damage to the next enemy who acts this turn. If it's a caster, set its remaining health to 5 instead. This is batshit crazy of how strong this ability in theory could be against casters, but holy shit, it isn't going to be that consistent unless you are fighting against old gods where most of their team is going to be casters. This doesn't really do much, but it is really big hate on casters, which is going to be the main issue with a mercenary like this being a protector. I don't know if this is enough for you want to run Prince Malchezaar, but it could be in some edge cases. And if there was any a time for a mercenary like this, it would be right now, where casters are really, really popular. Flying Axes is his first equipment, which is a passive that gives him plus 15 health, and the battle cry, change a random enemy merc's role to protector. Really doesn't do anything. I don't really care if we change something to protector, mainly to the fact that the other two abilities on him are a lot better than his protector ability, but it's okay, I guess. Parrying Blade, which is a battle cry equipment that permanently reduces enemy protectors and casters attack by 10. Really good as an equipment. Probably the equipment that you're going to be using default on him. And finally, 3 moves ahead, which is a passive that makes enemy casters' abilities 2 speed slower. These are probably the 2 equipments that you're going to be wanting to use the most when it comes to him, if you are going to use him on a team. I don't think he's a strong mercenary. He is a rare, so it is kind of to be expected. And now Neeru Fireblade is making his way into Mercenaries. He is a orc mercenary with 9 attack, 84 HP. His first ability is Command Demon, which is a fel ability, speed of 5. Summon a wild imp, 5, deal 10 damage to an enemy. Your imps will target it at this turn if able. Wild Imp 5, which is a demon with a 5 attack, 15 HP. At the end of the turn, deal 12 damage to a random enemy. And this will scale with fel damage increase, which is really cool to say, because this means this will scale really, really quickly, and it doesn't have a cooldown, so you can really flood your board with this. Though it might be better to use something like Jiraxxus to actually scale up using the Infernals, but it's an additional way to scale up fel damage on Gul'dan if you are using him for his fel damage equipment, or another way to just increase the amount of damage that you're going to put out each individual turn, because it is kind of like a Ghidorah without being a Ghidorah cannon summon, because it is a little bit quicker. Burning Blade Portal is a fel ability with a speed of 5, cooldown of 2. At the end of your turn, fill your board with wild imps, 5. Another way to just increase the amount of demon synergy and fel damage that you can actually possibly have out in a given turn. Honestly, incredibly strong for a second ability, something that I would have expected on a final ability. And finally, we have Implosion, which at level 5 is a speed of 6, fel ability, cooldown of 2, destroy a friendly imp, deal 10 damage plus its attack and health to a random enemy 3 times. Now, when we're talking about a strong mercenary, this one is really, really strong. Though the cooldown of 2 makes it a little bit harder to actually use either of his final 2 abilities, but if you can actually allow him to survive, then this is perfect. I think this is going to be a really good mercenary to bring on from the bench and not be a starting mercenary, though it really depends on what his equipments are, since his first equipment makes Wild Imp have plus 15 additional HP, which means Implosion is going to be dealing at minimum 45 damage if it doesn't take any damage, and most people aren't going to focus down the imps. They're probably going to focus down Fireblade first. Then Combustible Imps makes Wild Imp have the Death Rattle, deal 12 more additional fel damage to a random enemy. Again, this should increase with the fel damage synergy that we do have throughout the entire game, and probably really, really good And then finally, we have Demon Armor, which is a passive that your demons have immune while attacking. Now, in certain teams, Demon Armor is probably going to be an incredibly good equipment. However, for the teams that I'm really thinking about, where you're going to try to use the imps to their fullest, I think honestly combustible imps is probably going to be the default equipment. Jumbo imps also is pretty decent, but it does require your opponent not to have any type of AoE damage to get the increased damage. I do like this mercenary a lot. I don't think he's as strong as Archimonde, but he is actually a pretty good introduction for a fail-based team or even an orc team where you're trying to combine the two synergies into one. Now we have everyone's favorite warlock for Hearthstone, Nesmy Necrofizzle. I actually didn't know what her last name was. That's kind of interesting. She is a gnome with 9 attack, 70 HP. Battlecry, summon a 10/24 bog elemental with taunt. We finally have a use for the local R equipment that I was actually planning on doing something with this week, and then we got the announcement for these mercenaries, so that might be the following week. So I do kind of want to use Shadow Trolls beforehand. We'll see how I feel in the end. It's the first mercenary with a battle cry just baseline into the mercenary, and this actually kind of makes me a little bit hopeful to maybe see in the future Eudora just getting her equipment melded into her baseline, because everyone always just uses the battle cry, summon a cannon equipment, and nothing else. It would open up the possibility of a new equipment slot, which I don't know. I haven't looked at the changes to mercenaries, so there might be some balancing changes after these 14. Her first ability is Boggy Blast, which is a nature ability, speed of 7, deal 15 damage, summon a 10/25 Boggy with taunt. If you already have Boggy, give it 15 health instead. A little bit slow. I do really want to try out a elemental team though, as this is an easy way to actually just protect local R by having the biggest boggy elemental that you could ever have. Her second ability is Erupting Fungus, which at level 5 is a nature ability, speed of 4. Choose a friendly character. After it survives damage this turn, it deals 18 damage to a random enemy. Honestly, I don't know how useful this ability is going to be. It does scale with nature damage, which is pretty decent. It is pretty quick, so you can actually use it pretty quickly, and you could use it in theory with Malfurion if you are going to do a nature-based team using her. Kind of interesting to see a warlock not actually use any fell or shadow abilities, instead all nature. Makes me wonder if MZ actually isn't a warlock and really is a druid instead, but you never know. And finally, Bogomatics at level 5, a nature ability, speed of 3, give a friendly character plus 5 attack, plus 10 HP, and taunt. If you have Boggy, give it plus 5/5. So 2 ways to actually scale up your mercenaries, though for the most part, honestly, I would probably just want to keep targeting Boggy itself, since I don't want anything else on my team to actually just die. Though this does allow you to do some taunt synergy if you really feel like it, since Vander does exist currently in mercenaries and hasn't seen much play. Some of her equipments is going to make this a little bit better, such as Boggy Moss, which makes Boggy gain adjacent characters take 7 less damage. Kind of boring, but it works, I guess. Fishing Lure makes it where Boggy gains plus 10 health, and after this is attacked, attack a random enemy. A way to make use of scaling him up as quickly as humanly possible, though it does make him a little bit more susceptible to actually dying. And finally, we have Crush Peaches, which makes Boggy gain at the end of the turn, give your taunt characters plus 12 HP. Now, this equipment is probably what I would want to use in a taunt-based team, or even maybe just in a default team with it, because Boggy should give themselves plus 12 health too. And if you have any other taunts on the team, this could be a really easy way to actually keep them alive, even though it doesn't actually heal them. I don't know where exactly this mercenary is going to fit. There are a lot of possibilities, which makes me actually really happy to see this type of mercenary, as some of the other ones only really have 1 or 2 teams that they fit in, and this probably fits into like 4 or 5 different ones, to be honest. Now, Garona Halforcen is a rare fighter. She is a half-orc, the second half-orc that we actually have. She has 10 attack, 84 HP. Her first ability is Smoke and Knives, which is a shadow ability, speed of 8. attack an enemy and deal 20 damage to a adjacent one. If it isn't already a fighter, become one and deal 26 damage instead. Given the fact that her equipment will make her actually neutral at the start of the game, I think that would be a pretty decent little buff. However, it is really, really slow, which means I don't think people are going to use it too much. Shimmering Toxin, which is her second ability that has a nature tag, a speed of 1, gain plus 10 attack, take 12 less damage this turn, become a protector. Starts off cooldown. So it doesn't look like this ability actually has a cooldown, so I don't know why it says starts off cooldown. That's kind of weird, but it is what it is. Maybe it's just bad wording. So if this is going to take 12 less damage this turn, unless you can actually give it taunt, and this isn't going to do much in most cases. I guess you could give it taunt using Uther. However, that's 2 protectors on the starting lineup, and I guess that could allow you to actually abuse one of her later equipments. One and the same, which is a cooldown of 1, discover a lineage ability combo, become a caster first. Dev comment when abilities discover an ability, that includes the discoverer's ability speed. Lineage ability is a selected from several classic abilities, which means she's basically a secondary copy of whatever other orc-based mercenary that you actually want to use. However, because she doesn't have a orc tag herself, that means she's not going to be able to scale off of these, which makes this ability kind of useless. And her first equipment is Shadow Step, end of turn. If you control another merc, gain +4/+5, return to the bench, opposite Maestra. Allows her to scale up if you keep bringing her out or have ways to bring her out really, really quickly. Halforcen Legacy, which is a battle cry. If you control an orc, gain +3/+10, repeat for Draenei and human. Again, if you give her taunt with Uther, that gives you at a bare minimum +3/+10. And then you also have an orc on the team, so it's +6/+20 in theory the start of the game, and then if you can bounce her back using Maestra, you can get that again. But it's going to be incredibly rare for you to actually get all 3. So it is kind of interesting to see that they're referencing both Draenei and human when she is technically only half orc, half Draenei, but the human reference is to Medivh, who she may or may not have a kid depending on if Dan is still canon to the Warcraft story or not. Finally, Knife of Indecision, which is a battle cry equipment, gain +15 health, become neutral. Now, this makes me really frustrated because Warwalker Cho has the equipment that gives him -20 HP, but makes him neutral. And this just makes her neutral and gives her a benefit. It's really, really inconsistent of how they wanted to do this. I guess maybe if there are changes to some of the existing mercenaries, maybe that equipment would be changed. Maybe it's because, generally speaking, Cho is way better of a mercenary than Garona, but I'm curious if you could make a menagerie team. That's the main hope that I'd have for a Garona mercenary, I guess. Alright, now for Khadgar. Khadgar is being added to the game. He is an epic caster, a human with 10 attack, 82 health at max level. At the end of the turn, if all 3 of your basic abilities are upgraded, transform into Archmage Khadgar. His first ability is Arcane Surge, arcane ability, speed 6, deal 16 damage, upgrade Blizzard to root all enemies, Blizzard 5, Frost ability, speed of 5, cooldown of 1, 14 damage, upgrade Earth Fire to gain +5 attack. And finally, Earth Fire 5, fire ability, speed of 2, give your characters +12 health, upgrade Arcane Surge to speed 2. Now, I like what they're actually doing with Khadgar. It does give some uniqueness to him being a Archmage and showing off his skills of using all 3 schools of magic. I do think that the upgraded ability of Hearthfire actually giving an additional attack is kind of weird. I don't know why they're actually doing it, but I guess they ran out of ideas of how to actually make each individual ability actually upgrade. Blizzard is probably a really good ability, and so is Arcane Surge because you can decrease the speed quite quickly. Though Hearthfire is a little bit awkward to actually use, it does introduce some extra survivability in a team that might not normally have access to it. His first equipment is Bacon, which at the start of the game upgrades Hearthfire to be upgraded and gives Khadgar additional 8 health, just a way to actually speed up the ability of getting Archmage Khadgar. It looks like all 3 of his equipments are going to do basically this. The second one is Bitter Chill, which makes Blizzard upgraded and refresh 1. This is probably going to be the default equipment just so you can actually AoE everything down on turn 1 and root all your opponents attacking mercenaries if they are an attack-based team. And then Boon of Atish, which makes Archmage Khadgar have an additional +3 damage, Fire, Frost, and Arcane. This might be the one that people use. It is the high rolling equipment. I do think Bitter Chill is probably going to be the most default equipment that you're actually going to want to use. Oh, and it does look like they have a Archmage Khadgar here too to describe what he actually does. Prismatic Bolt, which is a speed of 2 that deals 16 damage. Then you gain +1 of each school of magic. I guess I got it a little bit wrong. Really, really, really good ability. Though it sadly does lose the School of Magic. It would be cool if we saw a multi-school of magic, but I don't know if they have the technology to do that. Archmage Nova, which is a speed of 5, cooldown of 1, cast all of Khadgar's upgraded abilities. Wait, does this just mean it loops infinitely? Or does this mean it's going to be using the original Khadgar's abilities? Because if it means the original Khadgar abilities, this is going to be a lot worse. However, I do think this is actually pretty decent overall as an ability too, just because of the fact that you are getting 3 abilities for the price of 1. And finally, we have the Trinuni Supremacy, which discovers one of his upgraded abilities. So I'm assuming this just means it's going to be one of the original 3 Khadgar's abilities instead of one of these 3, because that wouldn't make too much sense. I do think the ability to have Prismatic Bolt not actually scale with any of the damage that you're actually getting kind of sucks, but I do think this is probably going to be a pretty decent mercenary to include in where you want to actually scale up 2 out of the 3 types of damage instead of just 1. And this should allow you to actually scale up incredibly quickly, to be honest. Now, Medivh is a legendary protector who was actually in the original beta version of the game, if I remember right. He is a human with 11 attack, 86 HP. His first ability is Arcane Rift, which at level 5 is the Arcane ability, a speed of 5, deals 12 damage. Your next Arcane ability deals critical damage. Really insane for something like Tyrande, because you can actually combo this incredibly quickly with Tyrande, and does allow you to actually get the death blow really, really easily, where it actually repeats over and over again. Does introduce a protector to the Arcane team, which is something that the team has actually been missing for quite a while now. Honestly, just a really, really good ability for Arcane, which was already a really popular build that a lot of people actually were using, so I can't see a world where even after just this first ability, he doesn't see much play. Mage Guard is his second ability, which is Arcane ability also, with a speed of 3. Give a friendly character plus 15 health and taunt this turn. After it is attacked this turn, it gains plus 3 arcane damage. Okay, so you just use this on Reno, who already has taunt up, and then you just increase his arcane damage that he does each individual turn. I don't see a downside to this ability at all. You could also use it, I guess, on himself, but why do that when you can just target something that already has taunt, and then you can protect this one too? Finally, we have Summon a Raven Familiar, which is a speed of 6, cooldown of 1. Summon a Raven Familiar with speed resistance plus 10, and the Birds of a Feather ability 5, which is an arcane ability that deals 8 damage and increases by 5 whenever you use another arcane ability with a speed of 6. Honestly, his ability lineup is incredibly good. I don't know how useful the Raven Familiars will actually be. They are going to be a lot harder to kill because they do have the spell resistance and the fact that you can just keep on putting up taunts to actually protect them. And this might be the new win condition for a arcane based team. And it does have the beast tag on the Raven Familiars, which means Log Shin will actually be able to scale really, really quickly, and you no longer have to run something like Nefarian in order to do something like this. Really, really cool. Now for his first equipment, is Unstable Rune, which is a Battlecry equipment, and that summons a 0/10 Arcane Ward that counters the first ability used each turn. Because you can have Taunt up on the board really easily, this means this is going to be really, really annoying for a lot of people to actually use. However, this also does mean that it will probably counter your own first abilities if you go before the other person. So you can't actually protect this using really quick abilities, which might make it a little bit worse, and probably not something that you're actually going to be using. And then Medivh's Locket is after you summon a minion, give it +4 arcane damage. This is going to be the default equipment. I already can see it. It's a really good way to scale up. Arcane damage doesn't require you to do too much. You probably could use something like Cho's ability to summon the 2 monkeys to actually give +8 damage on a single turn. And then you also have Cho to have the additional 8 damage reduction, making them incredibly hard to actually kill. And then you can also just keep ramping them up with each individual use of endurance ability or whatever increases attack and HP on Cho each individual turn. Honestly, this is going to be an incredibly strong mercenary and probably incredibly difficult to actually play against. And then Staff of Atesh at the start of a game gives friendly casters +5, +10. If you're using a full caster team besides Medivh, this is probably pretty good because it does allow you to actually have a better cookie. However, I do think the second equipment is going to be his default. Tess Greymane is a rare protector. She is a human with 1682 HP. Her first ability is Yoink, which is a shadow ability, speed of 4, deal 15 damage, transform into a 1-time copy of the ability the target casts this turn. I know a lot of people are talking about some really meme combos, such as using this in combination with Rathian when he actually transforms, or using it in combination with some other things that have an incredibly long cooldown that you would want to actually have 2 additional versions of it, especially given one of her later equipments, which makes the transform permanent. Though both of these does require you to actually target your own mercenary with the damage, and I could see a world where this will either just not work with things like Rathian, or a world where they easily just change it before release to actually deal damage to an enemy instead of deal damage to a friendly mercenary. There's a lot of possibilities even just with this one ability if it doesn't be changed at all. Moonlight Resolve, which is a arcane ability, speed of 3, restore 25 health, transform into a 1-time copy of the last enemy ability cast this turn if possible. I'm really curious of what it means if possible, because there has to be a list of abilities where it wouldn't be possible, and I wonder what those abilities are necessarily going to be. It does make me wonder if Yoink is also going to fall under the same category, because they both do say the exact same thing, and we already know that Yogg-Saron can't cast certain abilities, though he can cast Brand's final ability for some weird reason, and it just ends up crashing the game when he does. But I'm really curious of what abilities this means you're not going to be able to copy. And then finally, we have Princess Power, which is a cooldown of 1, discover an enemy ability, cast 12 unique abilities this game to transform into what I'm capable of, which is a mini Oh My Yogg ability on Yogg that casts 5 random abilities you cast this game at an enemy if possible. Her first equipment is Yoink and Moonlight Resolve transform permanently, and their initial effects are improved by 6. I don't know what improved by 6 means. Maybe it means their speed is reduced by 6, or they have 6 higher ranks, or 6 more damage. It really just depends on what it actually means. I don't know how useful this is going to be. I think this is probably going to end up being the default equipment just because it does allow you to permanently transform into whatever ability that you're trying to hard target if the whole meme idea of targeting your own thing actually goes into play. But outside of that, I don't know again how useful it's going to be. Steadfast Convictions, which is her second equipment, that gives her +4, +8. Then after this deals damage to a merc, gain roll advantage. Honestly, a really bad equipment. Gaining roll advantage is nice and all, but it would have been nice to gain it before you actually attack with this mercenary or do damage. But it is what it is, I guess. Tools of the Trade, which is at the start of the game, transform Yoink and Moonlit Resolve into random single-use enemy abilities. Honestly, I take it all back. The first equipment is going to be her default one that most people use. It doesn't even matter if it's going to be in a team where you're not trying to abuse the fact that you're copying one of your important mercenaries. Now, her father is also being added to the game. He is a human with 12 attack, 89 HP at max level. His first ability is Blistering Bullet, which is a fire ability, speed of 2, deal 12 damage, transform into a Worgen. Then his Worgen ability is a Moonlit Strike that deals damage equal to this Merc's attack, transform into a human. So he's actually going to be using the mechanics he had in Heroes of the Storm, which is kind of cool. I guess he is a Worgen in WoW too, so he did something very similar. This is another fire mercenary, which is pretty decent. However, I don't think you're going to want to use him in fire, mainly because he's going to be alternating between having fire synergy and not having it. So using him as a trigger for something like Geddon isn't going to be consistent enough for you to want to actually do it. So you could, in theory, just use Space Maker every single individual turn to actually get that fire combo until you actually want to transform. But honestly, I think he will probably not be used in a fire team, though he is a good start for a Worgen-based team, I would say. And then Bestial Beauty is his final ability in human form, which is a speed of 4, cooldown of 1, summon a 120 human, taunt, battlecry, give your other humans and Worgen +4/+6. This ability is going to be really good in a human-based attack team, which there are enough mercenaries to do something like that. There always has been. They just need a few more really, really good mercenaries to be very, very useful. And I think Genn might be the thing that pushes them over the top, even though he does transform into a Worgen every now and then. His first equipment is Blood Moon, which makes him gain +7 attack, and then transform into Genn's other form, which means he's going to transform into a Worgen at the start of the game instead, and then Smooth Transformation at the end of the turn, transform into Genn's other form, and gain +8 health. Then finally, we have Gilnean Strength, which after one of your characters casts a even speed ability, restore 10 health to them. Really cool to see a reference to his Hearthstone card. Don't know how useful this is actually going to be. It does require you to actually build a team around using this much as humanly possible. It also does make me realize that all of his abilities have a speed where he can abuse this equipment as much as humanly possible. Even the upgraded abilities, which is really, really cool. I do think maybe at the end of the turn, transform is probably going to be the default equipment. Actually, that equipment could be really, really useful in a fire-based team because you could force him to transform and then he transforms back. This actually opens up a lot of possibilities that I didn't think about originally. That actually might be a cool way to build him. There's a lot of variety that you can actually do with him, which is really, really nice. And his Worgen abilities, Moonlight Strike deals damage equal to his attack, which means he is probably going to scale really quickly if you do use one of his equipments. You do it like that. However, if you're not going to focus on his Worgen transformation, there are other ways to just use him. As said before, Ankle Biter attacks an enemy, makes it 5 speed slower, while this is a human, which means if you transform back into a human and then you just force him to stay in human form, you can actually screw with your opponent's speed, which is really, really nice. And finally, we have Beautiful Beast, which inverts the stat line on the human to a Worgen and then inverts the buff that you would gain, thus allowing him to actually scale more quickly. I don't know, maybe some type of board buff in the human team would be really fun to actually play with him, or maybe a fire-based team. Now, Aranna Starseeker is the next mercenary. She is a rare caster night elf with 9 attack, 81 HP. Edge Cancel is her first ability, speed of 6, gain 7 attack. This turn, attack an enemy. If it has less attack, return this to the bench. Kind of weird to actually see this. I guess you could actually abuse it with her first equipment, which is a battle cry that gives her +2 fell damage, arcane, and nature damage, and +1 more for each of your other Night Elves and Demons. So you could use it either in a demon team or in a nature-based team. And that actually might not be a really bad idea, though it might require you to actually scale up her attack a little bit more before you can actually abuse the fact that you can just keep bouncing it back and forth over and over again. Her second ability is Velocity Atonement, which is a fell ability, speed of 9. Deal 22 damage to an enemy, set its attack to 0 until next turn. This is the Trigor answer that we've needed months and months after Trigor was a real big problem. We are seeing a little bit more of attack-based mercenaries in the metagame, and this could even answer something like Y'Shaarj too. So a lot of really good possibilities. She is a caster, so it's pretty decent as a counter for both of those mercenaries and anything else that might pop up. And Acrobatics is her final ability. It is a speed of 2, fell ability, cooldown of 1, deal 10 damage to an enemy, and swap with an ally across from it. Enemy abilities target the mercs, swapped targets if possible. And I just realized I read this completely wrong. It just swaps the location of her and whatever ally that is directly across from the mercenary that you're actually attacking. It just makes her a fell version of Lug Shin, in my opinion. Pentameter is her second equipment that makes enemies across have -8 attack. Again, anti-Trigor or anti-anything that attacks a lot. And Glaive Land, which is a battlecry equipment also that can easily be abused with her first ability. That gives her +5 attack and roll advantage against this merc's current roll. So it turns her into a fighter instead of a caster, I guess. Honestly, out of the 3 equipments, Unbreakable Backpack is probably going to be the equipment that I would want to use her with 99% of the time, as it does have so much flexibility between the 3 types of magic. And it is the second mercenary that we're seeing with 3 types of magic that it has a lot of flexibility with, which is really cool in this batch. And it does look like this is going to be the last mercenary. However, we do have some changes to some existing ones, which, like I said at the start, it looks like Charge is going to be added to all the existing mercenaries that summon the add, which means N'Zoth is actually going to be better because you can target something with the spawn of N'Zoth now. Same thing with all these other ones too. Though I don't know if it was actually really needed for a lot of these mercenaries to get a little bit of a buff. The Sea Witch is the one that needed the buff the most. The other ones already see a lot of play, and I don't know why you would want to change them. Alright, so new zones and bounties. It looks like we're going to the Dark Moon Fair, and it's going to have 11 new bounties, and then they're going to add 5 new ones to the Fellwood Zone and 3 more to the Black Rock Mountain Zone. And that's it for mercenaries. Okay, no balancing changes. That's a kind of bit annoying. I would have hoped to see some of the underperforming mercenaries here too, such as like Gul'dan or something else. Because Gul'dan really is a horrible mercenary at this point. There's so many better ones. Let me know down below which ones you're most looking forward to actually using. There's actually a lot more builds that I can think of off the top of my head than I originally thought there would be with this batch of mercenaries. Like always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, bye-bye.